Hello and welcome back to MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things magic. In today's video, we are going to add the next 20 creature cards with mana values of 7 into our Momir Vig Cube. What's up, MTG BC? That is the MTG Burgeoning community. Welcome back to another installment of our ongoing Momir Vig Cube series. If you are unfamiliar with this series or just need a refresher, you can search in the description below for a link to MTG Burgeoning's introduction to the Momir Vig Cube. Additionally, while you're down there in the description below, you can click the link to Cube Cobra where you can see the contents of the cube as it stands right now. So today we got 20 creature cards with mana values of 7 going into the cube, and we're going to begin things off with Gloom Sour, an 8/6 that when it ever becomes blocked by a creature, that creature's controller loses 2 life and we gain 2 life. Now let's be honest, 8/6 is a massive body for the investment of 7 mana, and it doesn't have any evasion, so it's very likely that we can send this bad boy into combat for the purposes of hoping that our opponents just chump block it, because each time our opponents do, there's going to be a 4-point swing in life, and in a format like Momir Vig, where each player begins with 24 life, that life drain ability is going to add up very quickly, very, very fast. All right, next up, Creature 2, we have Glorious Enforcer, a 5/5 flyer with lifelink. At the beginning of each combat, if we have more life than an opponent, Glorious Enforcer gains double strike until end of turn. Can you imagine if we are fortunate enough to have more life than at least one of our other opponents, and we send a 5/5 flying lifelinker with double strike into combat, a 20-point life swing? Glorious Enforcer is going to be one of those sneaky good creatures from the 7 spot that really could spell the end for our opponents. Creature 3, Mono Red Goblin Dynamo, a 4/4 Goblin mutant that we can turn sideways to deal 1 damage to any target, which for the purposes of this cube could be very, very valuable for picking off chump blockers or some annoying utility creatures that might be wreaking havoc on the battlefield. As an even bigger ability, we can pay X in a red, we can tap and sacrifice Goblin Dynamo to deal X damage to target creature or player. Make sure you're packing those mountains in your basic land deck, MTGBC, because it may be worth sacrificing Goblin Dynamo to take out a troublesome creature or to finally deal enough lethal damage to one of our opponents. Creature 4, Mono Blue, Goliath Sphinx, an 8/7 flyer, and that is all. And geez, from the 7 drop, that may be enough. 8 points of damage, 1/3 of a player's starting life total. All right, the 1/4 mark, we're back to mono white. We have Goringceratops, a 3/3 double striking dinosaur that whenever it attacks, other creatures we control gain double strike until end of turn. So if we can pick on an opponent that has very, very weak defenses, we can send enough of our team right at that player and hopefully eliminate them from the game. Creature 6 is our first colorless edition, going back to the time of Shadowmoor. We have Grim Poppet. It's a 4/4 scarecrow that ETBs with 3 -1/-1 counters. Best thing about Grim Poppet is we can just remove a -1/-1 counter from it to put a -1/-1 counter on another target creature. We don't have to pay any mana to do that, and we can do that at instant speed. So this could cause all kinds of headaches during combat for our opponents, and we could, in effect, have a 1-for-3 when this ETBs and we remove 3 -1/-1 counters, potentially putting them on up to 3 different creatures with toughnesses of 1. All right, next up in our first multicolored creature of this video, we have Gruul Ragebeast. It's a 6/6, and whenever it ETBs or another creature ETBs under our control, that creature fights target creature an opponent's an opponent controls. In a format like Momir Vig, where we have no instants or sorcery spells, and all removal must come in the form of abilities from our creatures, One like Gruul Ragebeast could be enough to completely take control of the battlefield and eventually just win based upon numbers. All right, moving forward, another colorless edition. We have Guardian of the Aegis. It's a 7/7 golem. It has Defender, which means it cannot attack. However, when a creature attacks us, if we control Guardian of the Angel, if we control Guardian of the Angels and it has Defender, it loses Defender and gains Trample. So let's face it, our opponents are looking at a creature that's a 7/7 wall, that if it decides to attack us, we instantly turn that into a 7/7 trampler because the Defender disappears. This will make our opponents question whether or not they want to stare down a 7/7 trampler. All right, moving to creature number 9, another mono red edition, we have Hamlet back Goliath, a 6/6 giant warrior. Whenever another creature comes into play, pay attention to that because it's not just a creature we control. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield, one of ours or one of our opponents, we may put X +1/+1 counters on Hamlet back Goliath, where X is that creature's power. This guy will become ginormously gargantuan. If only it had some evasion. It's a good thing there are many creatures in the Momir Vig Cube that could grant evasion to Hamlet back Goliath. Sticking with mono red as we get to the halfway point of this video, we have Hateflayer. It's a 5/5 elemental with Wither, and for anyone who's unfamiliar with the Wither mechanic, this creature will deal damage to other creatures in the form of -1/-1 counters. So instead of dealing 3 points of damage to a creature, if a creature takes 3 points, if they have Wither, that will be 3 -1/-1 counters. So we can also pay 2 in a red and untap, not tap, that's the untap mechanic. We can pay 2 in a red to untap Hateflayer, and it will deal damage equal to its power to target creature or player. Wow, so this could be a very, very powerful creature, particularly if we are able to get this creature into combat safely as a 5/5. And even if we can't, we still, if you're packing those mountain sources in your basic library deck, you want to make sure that you can pay the red mana to untap this and deal 5 damage, maybe to the creature that's going to block Hateflayer to see that creature also perishes, or you deal it right to the face of a player and have them lose more than 20% of their starting life total. All right, kicking things off for the second half of this video, we have Havoc Demon, a 5/5 flyer that when it dies, all creatures get -5/-5 until end of turn. Although this doesn't guarantee a complete board wipe, it should come pretty close if Havoc Demon meets its demise and gets buried in the yard. Creature number 12 is another mono red edition. This time we're going back to our dragons, a Kite Punisher. It's a 6/6 flyer with fire breathing, which means for every red mana you channel into it, it's going to get +1/+0 till end of turn. So very similar to what we were talking about with Goblin Dynamo and what we were talking about with Hateflayer. MTG BC, make sure you have those mountains in your basic land library. Creature number 13, it is a demon, of course. It is Herald of Anguish. It's a 5/5 flyer with the improvise mechanic. However, in Momir Vig, that is completely meaningless because all creatures are summoned randomly from the Momir Vig Cube. At the beginning of our end step, each opponent discards a card. That is a massive advantage for us because remember, each time we summon a creature from the Momir Vig Cube, we must discard a card from our hands. And those cards in our hands are lands. And of course, we need those lands to put onto the battlefield so that we can pay for the mana to activate our Momir Vig SIMIC Visionary Avatar. So depriving our opponents of those lands, either to put onto the battlefield or to use for discarding for the Momir Vig summoning, is very, very beneficial for us. And lastly, we can pay 1 and a black mana and sacrifice an artifact, and target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. Now, there are no artifacts in this cube. However, as we've already seen throughout this video, there are a number of artifact creatures. So even though artifact by itself is not viable in this format, there is a possibility that we could still pay 1 in a black mana and give target creature -2/-2 as long as we sacrifice one of our artifact creatures. Once more, MTGBC, make sure you're packing those black mana sources in your basic land library. Next up, sticking with mono black, we have Herald of Leshrac, a 2/4 avatar with flying. It has a cumulative upkeep of gaining control of a land we don't control. Yes, this will bring about many groans and moans from your opponents. Herald of Leshrac will get +1/+1 for each land we control but we don't own. So pretty much the lands that we borrowed from our opponents will give Herald of Leshrac its power and toughness boosts. When Herald of Leshrac leaves play, each player gains control of each land that they own that we controlled. So this is the ultimate hate card for our opponents. If we're fortunate enough to summon this to our side of the battlefield, and if we can continue to keep it alive, even if we don't send it into combat or use it as a blocker, we're going to gain land after land after land until its power and toughness is so massive that we should be able to send it into combat and one-shot each opponent after each opponent. All right, reaching the 3/4 mark of this video, another mono black creature. We have Hollowborn Barguest? How the heck? Barguest. I'm going to go with Barguest. Hollowhorn Barguest. It's a 7/6 demon hound. At the beginning of our upkeep, if we have no cards in our hand, each opponent will lose 2 life. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, if that player has no cards in hand, they lose 2 life. So we got to make sure we watch out for the cards in our hand, and if there is the bonus of not having any, well, we're going to drain our life. We're going to drain our opponent's life for 2 each time. Creature number 16, Hornet Queen. 2/2 insect with flying and death touch. When it ETBs, it's going to create 4 1/1 green insect creature tokens with flying and death touch. We're going to get a total of 5 evasive death touchers for the price of 7 mana. And in a format like Momir Vig, as we continue to drive this point home, any creatures that can create other creatures are extraordinarily valuable in a format that's all about creatures, particularly when you consider that we can only summon 1 creature from the Momir Vig Cube per turn. Next up, back to mono red, we have Ignition Team. It's a Goblin Warrior with 0/0, but it ETBs with X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is the number of tapped lands on the battlefield. Minimally, just because we're going to be channeling our own mana into summon something from the 7 spot, minimally we should have at least 7 counters on this creature. We can pay 2 in a red mana to remove a +1/+1 counter from the Ignition Team, and target land becomes a 4/4 red elemental creature until end of turn, and it's still a land. With enough red mana sources at our disposal on the battlefield and under our control, we should have the ability to swarm our opponents by turning our lands into 4/4 attacking creatures. All right, next up, mono blue, and we're going to go with Inspired Sphinx, a 5/5 flyer. When it ETBs, we draw cards equal to the number of opponents we have. Card advantage, MTGBC. We can also pay 3 in a blue, and we can create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact token with flying. Again, make sure you're packing those islands and those basic land decks, because Inspired Sphinx has an ability that could end up becoming game-winning. 2 creatures left. Creature number 19, going back to the time of Odyssey. This bad boy, I should say this bad girl, was reprinted. And look at that foiling. This is Iridescent Angel, a 4/4 that has flying and protection from all colors. So, you know what that means, MTGBC. You're sending it into combat, and you know it's connecting as long as your opponent does not have a colorless Reacher or a colorless flyer. This is going to sit back on the battlefield as well and can block any colored creature that comes its way. Iridescent Angel is the unstoppable force and the immovable object. And lastly, we have creature number 20 to close out this video. It is Isleback Spawn. It's a 4/8 Kraken with Shroud that will get +4/+8 as long as a library has 20 or fewer cards in it. That may be a feat difficult to pull off in the Momir Vig Cube because this is a format that is dominated by creatures. There are no instants, there are no sorcery spells, so as to get to a library that has 20 or fewer cards in it, either something ridiculously happened with an ability of one of the creatures, or it's one of the longest games in Momir Vig history. Either way, the floor of this creature is a 4/8 with Shroud. And there you have it, MTGBC. 20 more creature cards into the Momir Vig Cube with a converted mana cost of 7. Let me know in the comment section below, which are your favorites? This is MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things magic.